Hi, welcome to Moyna Bass Fishes. This was the Champions Tour tournament on the Mississippi River, which is Pool 4 in Wabasha, Minnesota. This is the recap of that tournament. I did finish third place out of 51, so happy with that, although it was not the perfect performance by me. I definitely had some um, just imperfections in decisions, imperfections in some technique, execution. Had I had a more perfect tournament, the victory was there to be had. So I'm a little disappointed I didn't, have the perfect tournament and take this win. But after the morning, you get two sessions. You get a morning session and an afternoon session. And the morning session was a little rough on me. I think I was in 12th after the morning session. And then I had a much better afternoon session and made the move up to third. I was in second at one point, but the juice where I was fishing, I just couldn't catch any more there. Or I guess I could have grinded in there, maybe caught one or two more, but I still felt like I needed to catch like 7 or 8 more fish to win. So I just kind of went to some fresh water and didn't really get in them. Caught a couple more, but not enough to take down the win. So the Mississippi River's got here. It's got smallmouth and largemouth. It's you hear about tournaments and the national tournaments in lacrosse all the time. This is basically lacrosse is pool 8. This is pool 4. But it's very similar type of fishing. Similar, I mean, everything's about the same, except this pool 4's got what they call Lake Pepin, and it's a huge lake, and so that's a little different. So you have like a river section above Lake Pepin, and then you got a river section below Lake Pepin. There's no dam to make Lake Pepin. It's just kind of a natural occurring lake. So anyhow, let's talk about how I caught them. And my strategy. Okay, so after the 5 days of practice, I practiced largemouths and smallmouths, and I really felt strongly that I could do my best on the smallmouths. So I had and they divide this up. So the way this tournament went, in the morning session, you fish the Wisconsin side of the river, of the main channel. You were not allowed to fish anything on the Minnesota side. And then in the afternoon session, it was the exact opposite. You had to fish all Minnesota stuff and then no Wisconsin stuff. So I knew I was a little weak after practice. I know I was a little weak on the Wisconsin side, but I did have one really good area. I was the last boat out. So, but I still felt like it was a big enough area where if there was a few boats there, no problem. So I get there, and literally there's at least a dozen boats in this area. And so I get in there, and I fish for about 15 minutes, try a few different things. I don't see much happening by anybody. And I'm like, okay, this is not for me. I'm just going to abandon this and go try my other Wisconsin place, which was a largemouth area. And I got there, and it's a decent sized area. There were a couple boats there, but there's enough area in there to move around. So I got there, and what it was is just a backwater area where they spawn, and most of those fish were just fry garters in there. The big females weren't really around. It was just mainly fry garters. But for the purpose of this tournament, where it's a catch, weigh it, and release, you're just looking for numbers of decent fish. You don't need the monster fish, although it's certainly more than welcome to be in the boat. But you're just looking for numbers of fish. And the fry garters out here average, like 2¼ pounds. Maybe you get some that are pushing 3, so not bad. So to catch these fry garters, and they're kind of scattered around, but it was shallow water. I mean, literally, 2 feet and less. And so I was mainly just trying to get either a buzzing toad in front of them or a whopper plopper style bait in front of them, and just trying to find one of these fry garters. Some of them would hit it, and some would just kind of show themselves. And then if they showed themselves, then I'd throw like a weightless worm or a really lightweight worm on them and see if they'd bite it that way. So, anyways, so I ended up, I think I was in 12th place after the morning session. Wasn't too happy. I only caught six fish that scored. Lost one. Wasn't really too happy about how that morning session went, because I really felt like even there, I mean, I felt like I should at least catch 10 fish out of that area, and I didn't. So now, for the afternoon session, I was going to be boat 1. And I felt really good about, I felt like I had 2 good options for the afternoon session. I felt like I could go do the smallmouth thing or do the largemouth thing. So I already did the largemouth thing, and I kind of had a feel for that. Whereas the smallmouth thing, I really wasn't so certain about that. I mean, in practice, it was so easy to catch them. They're really aggressive, but we had a really cold night last night, and we had bright blue bird skies, slight north wind, so some kind of little front came through. Whereas in practice, we had a lot of cloudy weather and that, and the fish were pretty hot. I mean, they were coming for you. So I didn't really feel comfortable. I mean, I really went back and forth in my head while we're during our 1 hour break between sessions. I was really going back and forth between my head what I should do, and I finally decided, you know what, I feel better about the largemouths. I feel like I know what to expect, what I can do to get them to bite. So that's what I went with, was the largemouths in the afternoon session again. And it was a decent move. I mean, I really I put myself in a position where the win was obtainable eventually. It just fell short, ran out of fish. And again, these fish were, some of them were fry garters, but some of them were, I think were like former fry garters, ex-fry garters that just happened to set up on some of the stuff I was fishing there, because there were no big fish there. It was just that, you know, 1 pound to 3 pound type of fish was in this area. You know, no, there were no female type fish. I didn't think. So, anyways, and what this spot was, it was similar to the other spot in that, you know, these largemouths, they spawn in dead water where there's no current. So it was a currentless area, and again, just shallow water, really shallow. I mean, less than 2 feet. So again, same kind of baits, although there was more like duckweed and algae floating on the surface in this afternoon area. So the frog really came into play. Whereas in the morning session, it was mainly throwing a lot of whopper plopper and that sort of thing. Some buzz and toad in the morning. The afternoon session was primarily a frog, although I did weigh some on the buzz and toad, I weighed some on the whopper plopper, and also flip some up into the matted junk. Probably like three of those fish were flipped. But there was one area where it was really good, and when I was done, and I really fished it slow, methodically, because there were still a few more fish there, but eventually it came to where I felt like I just had to move on, because you know, I probably had like an hour left, and it was either keep fishing there and maybe catch another 2 or 3, but that wasn't going to win me nothing. So I decided to just start fishing some fresh cover. Maybe I could stumble into some more, and never really got into them good again. I remember I lost one about 3 pounds in that last hour, and then I caught 2 that were like 1.5 pounders towards the end. So that just kind of helped. At least, you know, it held my position anyway. You know, I dropped from second to third, but didn't drop any farther. All right, so let's get into the baits. Get the rods out. Okay, and we'll just kind of go through these. Some of these are smallmouth. You know, it turns out I didn't do any smallmouth fishing today, so other than the first 15 or 20 minutes. All right, so let's get into the baits that I used and the rods that I used them on. So first of all, this is just one of them buzzing frogs, and sometimes this works really good on fry garters for whatever reason, especially in ultra shallow water. I remember on Rayburn many years ago in a tournament, there was a lot of fry garters, and I took this buzzing toad and made a decent check in that tournament on fry garters. So that's that. You know, I was either using this blue one or I got a June bug one. I don't know what color is best. I just seem to get into the theme of using these darker colors like that. All right, so then that's just a wacky rig. I did not throw it that much, did not catch one on it. Here, again, if I was gonna do the smallmouth, and it was windy, I had this tied on. I caught some in practice on this 1/4 ounce all-terrain smallie smasher with a little swim bait on there. I've caught smallies out here in the past with that, so if there's a little bit of wind, that's a good choice. This I rigged up in the morning, right when I got up to my largemouth spot. I'm like, you know what? I need a little Texas rig, a little tiny worm floating, or not floating, but weightless worm. So there it is, the old Cream Scoundrel. And I rigged that Texas rig down there because there was a lot of just dead weeds and like dead cattails and just some hay kind of looking grass. And so I didn't want to throw it wacky through that cattails. So that did catch me one. How did it catch me one? I threw a buzzing toad out there. Fish just went berserk on the buzzing toad, but somehow I didn't get it. So then I took that, threw it over there, and immediately ate it. All right. Next. Now, one thing I'll say about the smallies and topwaters out here, a lot of them were bedding, and so it was a lot of it was more of a defensive topwater strike with these smallmouths, and I literally threw probably like 15, 16 different topwaters through practice, trying to figure out maybe a color that would work a little better, try a different style. I had a heck of a time. So what I ended up, this one I actually took this one off because I put a largemouth topwater on it. Oh, I did catch one largemouth. I'll say this right now. I caught one largemouth in the afternoon session on that right there. It was the first one. And it kind of helped clue me in as to the location, because in practice, when it was cloudy, I caught a bunch on that, but it was more in the open areas. So I happened to throw this near one of them matted gunky mats, and a fish just stormed out from under that mat and drilled it. So then that kind of told me, hey, maybe I should be throwing a frog a little more, and the frog paid off handsomely. So this was a topwater bait that I had tied on for the smallies. It's a walking bait, and I just felt like this was going to, to me, this felt like one of the baits that hooked up more fish than some of the others. Because literally, honestly, I was getting a lot of strikes in practice on topwaters, but I was probably hooking up maybe 30% of them, and I'm not kidding. That is horrible. Even with smallmouths, usually, if fishing like Rainy Lake, for example, I'm probably hooking up at least 80% there. But here it was like 30%. It was just killed. It was eating me up, trying to figure out how to get them to eat these topwaters better. So I felt like this was this was one of them that was, especially when the clouds was out. I felt like this was one that was a little better at hooking up. The other, while we're on the subject of topwaters, let's just go to my other topwater. So, in my mind, this is how I process it. If I'm struggling with hooking up smallmouths on topwaters, and especially out here, because you do run into some smaller smallmouths, you know, like the 1.5 pounders, and those are scoreable fish. They just have a hard time getting their mouth out around a bigger topwater. So if I feel like I can still generate the bites with a smaller topwater, that's what I'll do. So here's a little popper, and this was probably my best hookup ratio was with this little popper right here in practice. I never really got a chance to use it in the tournament today. I did right away this morning, but the fish were just off. The guys that caught the smallest today were finessing them. So like Ned rigs and that kind of junk. So the topwater, it might have worked. The topwater might have worked in the afternoon, but I'll never know because I was doing largemouth with frogs. All right, so let's get out this bait. This bait was kind of important. I never really started fishing it until the last day of practice. There's the old Whopper Plopper. I chose black. I just had kind of a dark theme on my largemouth baits, topwater baits. So, and that, you know, Whopper Plopper, throw it out there, reel it in. You know, throw it in between the you know, little gaps in the emergent vegetation, and you know, a lot of accurate castings needed, steering it around things. All right, and then of course here's the frog. There was a popping frog, and again, like that's a black blue one. They seem to hit it pretty good. Although I'll say this, the small ones. This is like the regular size Spro. The small ones had a hard time eating it. So I was leaving some freaking meat on the table because they just nip at it and pop it and just bump it and stuff. They weren't going for the super aggressive blast on it. So I probably should have left this rod set up like that, but then had a downsized frog like the baby one. That might have been a mistake. Okay, what else? Here. This was I think I flipped up two with this in the afternoon session. This is a Texas rig, and it's just your basic Texas rig. So I flipped up a couple of that. They weren't big ones, but they were scoreable. 1 pound was a scoreable fish in this tournament. So that was nice. So there's that. Let's see, I got other stuff in here that I never really, oh here, I flipped up 1 or 2 with this here, that's your a little bit heavier weight on there. You didn't need a super heavy weight because it was kind of a thin canopy of mat. This guy's gonna start up something over here. So there's that. I think I got 1, maybe 2 on that. Yeah. So, and where I was fishing the smallmouth there's all kinds of riprap out here. So primarily riprap banks is where I was catching the smallmouths on the topwater from practice. And So I wasn't really doing the current break thing too much. Although I did in practice, I would take this Texas rig worm here, and I did catch a few on some current breaks with that, but nothing to get me committed to it in a tournament. What else I got? I got some swim jigs, some buzz baits, just tied in there, but they didn't play into my game today. Pretty much what you've seen. I showed you the smallmouth stuff, even though that didn't play much into the game either. But anyhow, this has gone on long enough. This is a great pool of fish. There's some, you get in some of these backwaters, you got to be careful. It's shallow, you got to idle around. Not all the backwaters are great. So there's some dead water back there. There are a lot of smallies out here. You can go to the current seam, sandbars, the rock riprap. There's always some smallies to be found somewhere. It's a fun place to fish. I love fishing the Mississippi River, and love fishing the Champions Tour. That's the league that put this on, the Champions Tour. They do a good job. They pay out well, which I certainly appreciate that, being a professional. So anyhow, that's all I got to say about that. Off to the James River. Over.